podcast. And right now I'm listening to your voice. I was like, I feel like I'm in the car right now.
Amazing. Here, just close your eyes and let's get better.
Yes, you have a good voice, by the way.
I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
I mean, did you know this before you decided to do a podcast?
Well, I think any of the people who were wandering around my house when I was 6 knew that, that training that I had a little tape recorder and I had a book of terrible jokes that I practiced recording into the tape recorder. I think they knew one day this would be the case, that I would have a career in podcasting. No, I don't think anybody knew, but I appreciate you saying it.
Of course. Okay, we're talking about the Better podcast. And I think, if not mistaken, this came about from the Performers Mindset training company you have, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Performers Mindset is trying to solve some essential sort of questions and some fundamental problems, which is that I think a lot of our systems are outdated. I think a lot of the things that we rely on maybe are 20, 30, 40 years old. And it doesn't mean that there isn't wisdom in there. It just means that some of those don't necessarily hold up to the way that we have to do things in this age of technology, with the tighter turnarounds, with the pulls from technology on our attention. So I think the kind of tools we need to be modernized and updated. And the way we see things, all of us are performers. Whether our performance means going on a plane for the first time, traveling across the country in a year or two, or if it means, a big pressure moment like an exam or an uncomfortable conversation with a family member. So we get a lot of great general advice, right? Like, just relax, have fun. But I wonder, if we want to be confident in those moments, can we train it? And, do we have the tools to embrace pressure instead of avoiding the inevitable nerves that come from a big moment?
That is so true. We are performing on every task we're on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how do we switch off, right? So like, I might have a great day and be so excited about what I'm doing. And then I notice I'm not tired. I'm not ready to go to sleep. I'm scrolling. I'm checking things, for whatever reason, I don't know how to deregulate. I don't know how to come down from the high of a great moment or the spin of a moment where things did not go well. And so we want to train not only the time before, the transition between our preparation and the moment we have to perform, but we also want to train the car ride home and how to deal with the rest of the day.
So are we learning this through your podcast?
Yeah, so that was the Performers Mindset. And so what's happening is I was creating these workshops with a series of collaborators, and we've been really fortunate to start working with a lot of artists. We ended up working with a bunch of athletes and coaches, and it moved us into the corporate space. But we thought, gosh, this is so important for every day. So anybody, anywhere might learn from these exact same principles. And so I was having these conversations, whether it be in a Zoom or at lunch, and I was like, I wish that conversation was recorded. I feel like a lot of people could learn from that. And so because so many of my coaching sessions are private, I was challenged by a good friend of mine to start recording them. And it took a minute with a pandemic and a little one running around to sort of get this into gear. But now that we're going, I'm hooked. I'm having such a good time learning from people.
I love how in your podcast you have something where you have the guest, but then you're talking about embracing risk or the power of dream, reframing journey, like small pleasures, like there's a delivery.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels really important that it's not just ethereal and it's not just like an idea, but how do we ground it in something practical? Who wouldn't want to embrace simple pleasures, right? Who wouldn't want to figure out how they can have a relationship with risk? So I'm so glad you picked up on that. And, that's really important to us to distill it down and make it practical.
So tell me about the preparation, because one of the things that I enjoyed for listening to your podcast is that you do a little intro.
Yeah. So I'm really fortunate. The people that I've had the fortune of being able to interview, I'm really excited to talk to them. And so I want to do a deep dive into who they are, a bit about their journey, how it intersects with the principles that we're valuing, both on the podcast and at my company, and then the things that I'm really personally interested in learning from them. And so I go through this whole dreaming process when I think about them, like, what do I really want to know? And then after I do a deep dive, I sort of distill it into a bunch of subjects with some questions that I think are consistent through all the interviews that we've done. But then I think, I really want to celebrate each guest. So the intro is a way for me to celebrate them and connect them to the listener, who some of them maybe they've heard of before, and some of them maybe they're learning about for the first time. But hopefully cheerleading up and getting some enthusiasm going for the why. Why are we tuning in? I think that's so important.
I like your icebreaker, by the way.
Thanks.
What is your current live headline?
Yeah, I feel like, so many of us walk down the street or we go to a coffee shop. I don't even know if people are still doing that, maybe more frequently than they were, but we say, how are you? And I think that's such a general question. And to me, how do you distill something like that down? And it's just a fun question that I've been thinking about. If you had to sort of crystallize it into a sentence, what's the highlight of your life at this moment? So yeah, thanks for celebrating that.
So for you, for this Friday, what is your current live headline?
Gosh, I had some quality time with my son earlier today. He's home from school this week. And so we did basically like a fun and games. So fun and games is what I would say. We were, on a quest this morning looking for snails on the grass. And then we had a big cleanup project from Halloween decorations. So we were unwinding them and he was standing by with scissors in case we needed them. But then also we needed to move our bodies. And so we went out to the garage and we basically were doing the gym games. And he hasn't been allowed into the gym because we moved a few months ago and we've been cleaning it out. Now it's all set up. So we did a lot of games together. He got to pick one, I picked one, and we did a whole workout and kept it fun, cranked some tunes. So I'd say today's headline is fun and games.
That's great. And what story would you say intrigued you and really or shocked you from your guest? I listened to quite a few, and one of them that really touched me was the one from Yogi Roth, where he's talking the story about his family and his granddad. Like, that was impressive.
Yeah, he's the embodiment of, to me, I don't know what version of male we're talking about, but he's just such a conscious human and somebody that can be in battle in the rigors of football, but then also who does yoga and cares enough to be conscious in his communication. And his grandparents' love story, like the lineage of how he got to be born, was like a scene out of an action movie. Like there was this narrow window and love saved his relative and love birthed his parents. And so the fact that not only does he celebrate that story and asked his grandparent about that story for so much of his young life, the fact that he's sharing it now and the fact that it's connected to how he serendipitously met his now wife. I always love a love story. With my grandparents, I kind of was like that for a long time. My grandmother wouldn't really know what to say as she got older. And so I'd always ask her, how did you meet Grandpa? And I think, she used to say, you know that story. But there's something so comforting about hearing it. And his is not an easy story to hear because it's rife with, a real big tragedy and trauma that happened in our collective. And so the fact that he's distilling love from it and sharing love from that, and that love wins, to me is beautiful.
And it's also about surviving.
Yes. In this time when so many of us, maybe that's our priority, how do we think about surviving? And how do we think about surviving better and getting more of us to survive? And maybe that's 1.0 of how we recover from this collective moment. And then we move towards, okay, so now that we've survived, what's next? How do we build on that? How do we move more into, expanding into, it's kind of cliche to say it, but I love what thriving means, right? Not just the absence of pain or the absence of symptoms, but the optimization of self. So collectively, how do we optimize ourselves in our community? The community of people that we see on a daily basis, the community of people that we live with under one roof. How do we optimize that? And how do we start thriving? and bringing others along. That to me is something I'm really deeply curious about.
Yes, that's the one story that I was just like, wow. And I actually had to get off the car in the middle of it for work, but I went back to get in that moment, and I was happy to hear it again.
Yeah. You're talking about episode 1 with Yogi Roth.
Yes.
Who is an incredible, Emmy award-winning documentarian and on-air host. But that story, his is the power of a dream, and that dream is definitely something that lives through him.
Indeed. Well, can you tell me a little bit more that we'll be listening to?
Sure. Gosh, we're at the midpoint of this first season. And just to give you some perspective, we've spoken to a lot of different types of people, right? Some people from the world of sports, some people who are incredible, chefs. We have the head animator from a movie like Frozen. And my hope is that through the course of the season, we'll develop a constellation perspective, so that when you listen to all 12 conversations, you might hear similar themes. You might hear a couple of tools that you can put into practice in your own life and realize, not only am I not alone in some of the things that I'm struggling with, but also, God, there's consistent themes here. And maybe that's something I can pay attention to. And I'm hoping that then we'll then share those in our conversations, whether it's with our journal or our spouse or our best friend, and then, start helping make the world better from there. But we're at the midpoint, so we've got 6 more to go. I couldn't be more excited. We've got some, incredible showrunners, people that create television. We've got a Grammy award-winning producer. Tomorrow, my guest, I'm so excited, is Malcolm Jamal Warner. So I'm really excited to talk to him about his music and his art and, his humanity as a papa. So we share that.
So exciting, no limit in content.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, we could take this in a lot of different directions, and I'm really excited to flow with it and see where the adventure leads, and I hope that other people will too.
We will. Thank you so much for your time, Joe. And like I said, now you won a listener. My brain is all over the place right now, but when it comes to, you have to get in that mindset of performing that task you're doing. I'm juggling all somehow, but yes, the problem is how to come down from it.
Yeah, and for those of us who have multiple things that we do, how do we transition between them? Like we transition into our day. We might transition out of our day, but are we doing that consciously or unconsciously? And so how can we do that when we have to shift from one job to the next, or go from a private conversation to being in front of 100 people? What are the consistent things we do that allow us to be at our best? So I'm sending you all the luck and vibes and mojo in the world for this moment for you. And I'm so grateful that you're a new listener. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm on the road a lot. So yeah, I'll be staying tuned.
Okay. Thanks, Nancy. Have a beautiful day and a great weekend.
You do the same. Thank you so much.